welcome to a special edition of A Deeper Dive with Dara Cam. That is me, Dara Cam. I am here live at the Turnbull Center for the Florida Chamber of Commerce's 2023 legislative fly-in. We're grabbing thought leaders and influencers as they're coming in and out for breakfast, so you might hear a little bit of noise in the background, but we're really excited to be doing this today. And one of our guests with me right now is Karen Moore. Karen, it's such a pleasure to have you with us. You are the owner and founder of Moore Communications. You've been doing PR in Tallahassee for a minute, for quite a while.
This year, we celebrate 30 years.
Holy cow.
Where has the time gone?
It's gone.
But what a pleasure to be able to be here with you and talk about the cool things that are happening in our state.
Well, let me ask you then. I mean, I have a list of questions, but let me ask you, what are some of the cool things that come to your mind about what's going on in Florida right now?
Well, right now we are here in Tallahassee with members up at the Capitol. So one, I love the economic development of all those people coming into our community.
Especially after COVID, and it really had an impact on Tallahassee's economy.
It did, but we are back full force now. Mm-hmm. So that's wonderful to be back and have all those leaders from across the state coming in to talk about what are the issues and how can we solve them.
What do you think is a major policy that won't get addressed during the legislative session?
Well, I think there's a lot of issues that could be on the long-term solution. We have issues around what do we need to do for infrastructure in our state. We're chipping away at that, but if we are one of the fastest growing states in the nation, we have infrastructure that was really decided in the 60s and 70s, and we've got to look at all those new cars and people on our roads and coming into our ports.
One of the biggest complaints, when I travel around the state, is especially in Central Florida, the Orlando area, traffic is such a major deal. One of the things that Florida has never embraced we have several large city centers around the state. They have never really embraced public transportation, and we've got Tri-Rail, we've got Sunrail, we've got trains, the commuter rails that just never really seem to take off.
I think we have a communication problem there. We do have those assets.
That's a great solution coming from a communications major, a maven.
We need people to understand that is an asset that they should take advantage of. Mm-hmm. I think people have a culture in America of being in love with their cars.
That's true.
But we need them to be so frustrated with their cars in traffic that they can think there's a better way.
Well, I tell you, my daughter lives in St. Pete. She works from home. She works for a large pharmaceutical company out of state, but she works from home. And she sold her car recently. And she has a little pickup truck that she uses for her other job. And she said it's amazing how much more conscious she is of going places and doing things all at the same time when she goes out, rather than just hopping in the car and going somewhere. But I always tell my friends, if they're moving to Florida, they need a car if they're coming from New York or Philly or other states.
Well, we have a significant number of transplants from the Northeast. And they may or may not own a car, but when they come to this state, they don't realize how big we are.
Right.
They don't realize what it takes to go from Tallahassee to Miami.
And forget about Key West, right? That's another 4 hours.
We should all be driving to Key West right now.
Well, I'm not driving anywhere. I'm still in the wheelchair, and I will be for at least another 4 weeks. So, all right. Well, let me ask you, do you think, you're in the comms industry, do you think state law should be changed to make it easier to sue journalists and media companies they work for?
You know, that is a hot issue right now,
Yeah.
and one I'm sure is very important to you and your colleagues. I believe in freedom of the press. I believe you have an important role to play in our state. So I think that if you are looking at what needs to be done to ensure transparency, what needs to be done to ensure factual information, you can't set up an environment and a culture where they're afraid to do that. They're afraid of being sued. Mm-hmm. You know, if you talk to Mark Wilson with the Florida Chamber, you'll see that Florida is the most litigious state in the nation. And so we have roads that are lined with billboards of let us sue for you.
Right.
Let us get money for you. We don't like what you said, so we're going to sue you. That's not good for our state, that's not good for our economy, and it's certainly not good for freedom of the press.
Right. Well, thank you. Amen.
Amen.
You know what? You know what?
I love it. Love it.
Okay, I got a couple of more. Well, you know, you have been involved in higher ed. You represent the Council of Presidents, the college presidents, I believe, right?
Correct. Those are the 28 state and community colleges. And I also am proud to say I am a trustee for Tallahassee Community College.
Well, great. Then,
Higher ed is a passion for me.
great. So there's a lot going on in higher ed, big shakeup in the state. They're
Yes.
the governor wants to do away with DEI programs and services. The tenure issue that I think is for universities, maybe not for colleges, that's also a big issue. No CRT. You know, what happened to New College, that's a university, that's a major upheaval there. What are the people in higher education, what are their thoughts about what's happening right now?
I think right now the governor has a very strong opinion of what he would like to see happen in our state. And we have colleges and universities that have thoughts, and our faculty have different thoughts. What I see right now from my perspective is that we need to invest in the state to see to it that we can recruit the best faculty, that we can retain the best faculty, and that we've got the dollars to see to it that everyone has access to higher ed. So when I look at all those issues going on, for me, my highest priority is letting the legislature know the best investment for this state for workforce development, for economic development, for businesses to grow is to help businesses find and have access to a trained workforce.
Well, that's something that the Chamber has been harping on in a positive way for many years also. But, I mean, is there a concern? You know, a lot of people in Florida don't want to talk about this out loud, so I appreciate you even addressing the issue. But is there a concern that we're going to see a brain drain in Florida with professors, you know, saying, you know, there's too much uncertainty here. I'm not going to come up, you know, pull up roots and move my family to Florida, and then, you know, 3 years later I'm booted, or because of the tenure changes or whatever.
Well, the environment right now is in a major upheaval. But what, excuse me, what I believe though is that if we can be the state that says we're going to invest in higher ed, we're going to have the best of the best brains wanting to come to our state. And so whatever gets shaked out with all these policies that are going on, what we need to do is say to the nation, if you want to participate in what is the #1 higher ed state in the nation, universities and colleges, we are open and we want you to come here.
Well, that sums it up. And also I'm a graduate of Broward, what was called Broward Community College. So
Yes.
I'm a huge proponent of state colleges, as you know. And I really appreciate you joining us today. Is there anything that I didn't hit on that you'd like to mention?
You know, I can tell you what a priority of the Florida Chamber is.
Sure.
And that's dealing this year with the cost of the lawsuits and the environment in tort reform right now. I think we have a real chance this year to look at what's happening with the legal environment, the frivolous lawsuits, what's being done in that area that has the ramifications of increasing the cost of insurance for all the communities, all the people, individuals in our state. And if we can address that this year, I think the business community is going to take that as a sign that they should invest even more in growing their business.
Well, I know that tort reform has been something that the legislature has been chipping away at for many years now. And it's a little complicated. There's many elements to this tort package that they're considering this year. We'll have to dig into that. Maybe we can get Mark Wilson on the pod to talk about what's in store.
I think that would be a great story for you to cover.
Yeah.
I believe this year we have the governor, leadership in the House and Senate who are committed to working on a solution. We have businesses, which we can document here at the Chamber, that say we're not going to relocate to Florida because of the litigious environment that you have here. We've got to change that, and I think this session's going to be the one to do it.
Well, there you have it from Karen Moore, the doyen of communications in Tallahassee. We've go back a long way, and she stopped by our table to do the live podcast with us from the 2023 legislative fly-in that is hosted by the Florida Chamber of Commerce, one of the big events leading up to the March 7th start of the legislative session. Thank you so much, Karen.
It's always a delight to speak with you.
We are coming at you live. It won't be live, actually, because we're taping it. But right now, I'm live at the 2023 Florida Chamber Legislative Fly-In. And I am joined by Film Florida Executive Director John Lux. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for doing this.
Absolutely.
So I've got a couple of questions I've been asking some of the folks who participated, and one of the things that I've been asking is, what's your legislative priority coming up? The legislative session starts March 7th. What's your priority?
So we have two priorities as an organization, as an industry. The first one is, we're continuing to try to get an economic development program here to the state of Florida for the film, television, and digital media production industry. We're the only state in the Southeast without one, one of just 15 states in the country, which puts us at a massive economic disadvantage and a competitive disadvantage. And so we're continuing to push that effort to try and get something across the finish line. Secondarily, we're working on something that's referred to as temporary airports. It has to do with where helicopters can land temporarily, and it's not just for our industry. It's for the construction industry. It's for different transportation as well. And there's discrepancies between where the FAA and the DOT have jurisdiction.
That's
and so
an under the radar.
It's very
that's an under the radar issue.
It's very under the radar, but it's also really important because for a production, if they come into town and they want to land a helicopter for whatever production reason, you don't have 6 weeks, 6 months to figure out where the best place to be is.
Right.
And there are people who know how to do that. I mean, we just need a little quicker access. Same thing from a construction industry. If you're delivering a big HVAC system at a hospital or a construction site, like, you don't have weeks and months to wait for approval. And so we're trying to clear up some of those things to lessen restrictions, lessen some of the red tape to make things a little bit more efficient. So those are the two things that we're mainly working on.
You know, I can't remember the speaker. There was a speaker a couple speakers ago. Who was it that really did not want to spend money on the film industry?
Well, Richard Corcoran was
who's
very
now
much
the president of New College,
Yes.
interim president of New College.
Yes, he was very, very
it was
much
Richard Corcoran.
philosophically opposed to any form of economic development. And, you know, it wasn't just a thing for us, it was across the state.
Right.
Some of that has continued. Our belief is that you must be present to win. You have to compete if you want to win. And while there are some that say, well, we're Florida, we don't need to do economic development, we don't need an incentive program for the film and television industry, there's almost a decade now of data that shows, yes, in fact, we do. We're getting, for the large-scale, high-impact film and television, we're generally getting pummeled. There are a number of projects in the state that are filming bits and pieces, but instead of filming months and spending $20 and $30 million, we're getting a week and getting $2 million. And that money goes directly into the pockets of individuals that work in our industry here in Florida, Floridians, small businesses, not to mention the amount of times they'll go to Publix or Home Depot,
Sure.
or all these other stores and restaurants and hotels. And so,
Gas stations,
everything across the board.
right.
The average feature film or television series spends $20 million in the local area in a period of 3 or 4 months.
That ain't changed.
That's $150,000 a day.
Right.
That means something. That's not minimum wage jobs. That's not small thing. These are real spending, real money that we are losing right now. And right now, there's a project that was just recently greenlit, called Panhandle, and it's being filmed in South Carolina. There's a Netflix television
I've heard
series.
about that, where they're supposed to be in Florida, but
Yeah.
they're filming elsewhere.
There's a Netflix television series that was greenlit last year called Florida Man. It's in North Carolina.
Wow.
There's a story that's based out of Ocala and Jacksonville, filming in Savannah. These are things that are happening every single day. And, the economy's good in Florida. Unemployment's low. It's generally a shoulder shrug to some.
Yeah.
But there's real people, real Floridians that don't have enough work, don't have enough money to pay their bills, have to leave their house for months on end to go work in Atlanta or New Orleans, and there's no reason for it. If my question is, if someone were to hand you a $20 million check, okay, you get $20 million. A couple months later, would you be willing to give back $2 million of that in a rebate? Well, you keep $18 million. Some legislators will say, well, we don't want to give away money. There is no giving away money. Right now you have zero. You have zero on this project. Your choice is to take that $20 million and then give back 2 of it as a rebate or a tax credit at the very end, or you get nothing.
It's a net gain.
It's a huge net gain. It's a massive net gain, which is why.
And then you add what the ancillary draws would be. Oh, people come to Florida, they love it. They're going to come back, bring the families back. Maybe they'll move here. That kind of thing, right?
Absolutely. Film-induced tourism is a real phenomenon. You can do searches for film tourism, and you'll find things across the board everywhere. I mean,
there's a name for it.
Yeah.
Film-induced tourism.
Film-induced tourism. It's a real thing. Visit Florida did a survey on it about a decade ago and showed that More than 20% of all domestic tourists came to Florida in part because of something they saw on film and television. Another study from a worldwide group showed that worldwide almost 20% of visitors go places based on what they see on film and television. It's a real thing. When Bloodline was filming in the Keys, they had more than $65 million of incremental tourism revenue directly from people that saw the Keys on Bloodline and said, "Hey, that's a cool place. Let's go check it out."
I watched that.
Yeah,
actually.
same. I mean, the
I
Clearwater
haven't been
Marine.
to the Keys in a long time.
The
Have you?
It's been a while. It has been a while, but I'm actually supposed to go this summer. So
When
yeah.
I start walking again, I'm going to go.
But Clearwater Marine Aquarium is another example. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah.
the aquarium was
love that
was
aquarium.
unfortunately almost bankrupt, and the two Dolphin Tale films completely rejuvenated it, and now it is actually University of South Florida did a study, 11,000 permanent jobs based solely on those films because of the increased tourism to the Clearwater area.
It's a philosophical thing, though, with a lot of these, particularly Republican lawmakers. They feel like, it's a government handout.
Well, I wouldn't even call it Republican because our co-sponsors in both the House and the Senate are Republicans. Are the vast majority of the Republicans support?
Some Republicans, not
some.
usually the Democrats that are fighting this.
We have overwhelming support from the legislature, which we're very thankful for. Unfortunately, we just don't seem to have it in the right areas of leadership. Yeah, in the House specifically is where our challenges continue to be. And so we continue to educate and we continue to have these conversations. And, I tell people it's a big jigsaw puzzle. And we don't know how many pieces are in it, but we're going to keep having those conversations and keep putting piece by piece together. And one day we're going to look down and say, hey, we got a full puzzle.
Florida is such a fabulous place. I mean, and it is so large, and it has so many. I've lived here for my whole life, except for periods when I didn't. But a long time, as I'm long in the tooth. And covering campaigns. I don't think there is a place in Florida that I have not been to.
Yep.
That was a double negatives, but I've been here and there and everywhere. So it's just there's so many different unique places, and it's got a lot of characters. I often say it's like 3 or 4 states, not just one state. There's a lot of states in Florida. And it's got to be a big draw, so there must be, I sense a little frustration. I mean, it must be frustrating when you see these films and TV series, especially when they're allegedly based in Florida, when you're losing out to other states, neighboring
It's
states.
tremendously frustrating on 2 levels. First, over the last few years, we know that we've lost more than 100 major feature film and television series that would have come to Florida, and they would have spent close to $2 billion. Again, that goes directly in the pockets of individuals and small businesses here in Florida that work in the industry. 250,000 hotel room nights, 125,000 cast and crew jobs for Floridians.
Not
it's just Floridian, not chump change. That's what we know of. We don't know what we don't know because if we're not getting the phone calls, we're not getting the emails as an industry. That's just what we know of. So that's tremendously frustrating. What is even more heartbreaking is the phone calls and the emails from colleagues and friends that say, I just can't do it anymore. I'm leaving. I mean, we're a membership-based organization, so every month we send out membership renewals.
Right.
Every single month I get a response from at least one of them saying, I've recently moved to Georgia, North Carolina, Louisiana. I'm not renewing my membership. So it hurts the organization, obviously, but it's even more heartbreaking to hear some of the stories of people that were born and raised in Florida, have families, have to uproot their kids, pull them out of their schools to go somewhere else because the industry that they gave their heart and soul to for their entire life just isn't cutting it anymore. The flip side of it is that's the traditional film and television side. We are doing very well with independent films, commercials, music videos, those smaller budget things, which it shows the potential when you see the type of work that can come out of Florida from the people that have gone to school at Full Sail, Florida State University, UCF, some of the best film schools in the country, to know that we have the potential, but right now we are importing or exporting those industry professionals, those young ones, to other states. It's terrible. We're getting hit on both ends.
You get a brain drain.
Yeah, we get a massive brain drain, and it's hard to get that back once we do. But as an industry, we are very resilient. We're going to keep plugging along, and we're going to keep doing what we know is best for the state of Florida. And I believe we'll get there. I just don't know when. But every conversation. That's why I come to conferences like this, because I'm having conversations with different people and meetings at the Capitol and all of these things. And I spend a good portion of my summer vacation on Zoom now with legislators all over the state, just continuing that education process to hopefully get to where we need to be one day.
Well, you did a great job championing your cause right here on Deeper Dive. Thank you very much, Film Florida Executive Director John Lux, for joining us today live. And that's why all the background noise, folks. Live from the 2023 Florida Chamber of Commerce Legislative Fly-In. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome back to the 2023 Florida Chamber of Commerce Legislative Fly-In. We are podcasting here live from the Turnbull Center, and I am very, very pleased to introduce a special guest, Florida Chamber of Commerce President and CEO, Mark Wilson. We go back a while, Mark. Welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, Dara, thanks for having me today, and thanks for being here. You and I have worked together so long that a lot of the issues that the legislature is taking on this year, you and I have dealt with 2 or 3 times in the past. And so it's we're optimistic, obviously, but I appreciate the chance to spend a little bit of time with you.
Thanks. And one of those issues is tort reform. Mm-hmm. That is a perennial issue for the business community. But you seem to have a very big package that's got the support of the governor, the Speaker of the House, and the Senate President. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your legislative priority with tort reform?
Yeah, sure. So this is part of a bigger push that we've been having for several years now of how do we grow Florida's economy the right way. And so if Florida was a country right now, we would be the 16th largest economy on the planet. And we're adding 1,000 people a day. And we need to do this the right way. And so our goal is to grow to the 10th largest economy in the world by 2030. That means we'd be bigger than South Korea. And I say that as a backdrop because whether it's education reform or infrastructure investments or bringing some sanity to our lawsuit abuse crisis, there's actually a lot of things Florida can do to make sure that we grow the right way. So when it comes to lawsuit abuse, a couple things that I think everyone would intuitively know. Number one is Florida has the 5th worst legal climate in the United States. And a brand new report came out that says that costs the average family of 4 in Florida over $5,000 a year. So toothpaste and the cost of insurance, auto insurance, et cetera, everything's more expensive. Also, in terms of what we're pushing in a package, something to keep in mind, Florida's economy is huge. It's $1.4 trillion. And we spend 3.6% of our entire economy in Florida, our GDP, on tort costs. No other state in the country spends more than 3% on tort costs. So what we have is a system that is it's not fair and it's not consistent. And so when we're competing with states like North Carolina, Texas, and others for manufacturing, for R&D, for technology, we don't need to be the best in the country, but we shouldn't be for 5th worst. So in terms of a package, mm-hmm. right, I think what's important to look at is some of these things are common sense. If we look at what's driving up the cost of auto insurance and property insurance, excessive litigation, I think everyone except the billboard trial lawyers would agree that we have a problem in Florida.
Hey, listen, let me interrupt you for a second. I did the wheelchair equivalent of the happy dance the other day. My home was built in the 50s here in Tallahassee, and I got my insurance renewal package in the mail, and I went, woohoo! Ooh.
Well, congratulations that you're getting a chance to renew your insurance,
Right.
because we were headed, until the special session happened, we were headed to a scenario where companies were leaving Florida because of our litigation climate. And now, of course, with what the governor and the legislature did in the special session, we are going to see insurance companies want to come back into Florida and compete. And what that's going to eventually mean is prices come down because companies compete with each other, as opposed to prices go up because there's no options.
Right.
And as you know, the government is one of our largest property insurers right now through the Citizens Property Insurance model. And we see in many parts of Florida a third to a half of properties being insured by the government, and that, of course, only seeks to rise prices too. So back to this package.
Yes,
Some people
I'm
call
sorry.
it tort reform.
Because it's all about me.
Oh, Dara. No, I think I got us off the subject. But when you have the fifth worst legal climate in the country, there's no shortage of options of what can you do to make the system better, make it more fair, make it more accessible. And what we're talking about are local businesses. So think about the small and mid-sized local businesses all over Florida, and one frivolous lawsuit could literally put them out of business. And so what we want to do is we want to give everybody access to the courts when they need it, but we want to also provide some certainty. So when you look at things like cost drivers for insurance, we have what's called bad faith, and that needs to be reformed. And again, like the Speaker of the House said this morning at our event, if insurance companies act in bad faith, they should be taken to the wall. But when billboard trial lawyers play games to take a $300,000 policy limit and turn it into a $10 million bad faith plan just by playing games, that's not fair for anyone, and it makes your insurance and my insurance more expensive. So what we want to do is we want to reform what's called bad faith. I know that's a technical term, but that ultimately gets costs, unnecessary and frivolous litigation costs, out of the system, which will add more competition into the insurance game, both on property and on auto insurance. We also have something called accuracy and damages, and this one's really easy to understand. We've probably all had medical bills before, hospital bills or medical bills, where you get something in the mail for $30,000 and then you're like, wait a minute, that's a lot of money. You call your insurance company and find out that that's actually been negotiated at $12,000. We all have that happen all the time, a knee replacement or whatever, a broken leg, right? There's the published price, but then there's the price everybody pays. In Florida right now, many lawsuits are based on the published price, right? And so what we want to do is we want to bring what we call accuracy and damages. We want juries to hear what was the actual amount paid for the medical claim, and then if there needs to be, 2 or 3 times that in economic damages or any other kind of damages, let's actually base that on the reality of what the claim was, as opposed to a published price somewhere. Sounds simple. Most people look at it and say, isn't that common sense? But again, this is a political process, and so we'll go from there. Also, there's a concept called comparative negligence, which is, we have cases right now where, just take an auto accident. This one's really easy to understand. Take an auto accident where you're parked alongside of the road and I come and I hit you, right? I think the whole world would think that's my fault, right?
Right.
But I can argue that if you weren't there on the side of the road, I wouldn't have hit you. Right? And again, this seems like common sense of like, why would I be able to sue you for being pulled over on the side of the road, right? And a lot of people would say, oh, that's a crazy case, that would never happen.
No, I have heard of these kinds of cases where somebody has done something, I don't want to say wrong, but they end up suing the...
Right.
They become the victim, I guess.
So the simplest way to think about the comparative piece is, if you're mostly at fault for something, you should mostly be the one liable for that. And what we don't want to do is to say, hey, how many people can I put in a line that we can sue? Right? Because that adds more lawsuits, that adds to the frivolous, problem that we have. And so, you put all that together in a package, and it's really just a bunch of common sense.
The trial bar has in the past had legislative leaders that have supported them in putting the brakes on a lot of these proposals. Particularly the bad faith one has been in the works for many years now. With the new leaders, though, they're both lawyers, but they are friendly to this legislation, and the governor is also a lawyer. So what's changed?
Yeah, so I think one of the things that's changed, you're exactly right, leadership, right? We have a governor, we have a Senate president, we have a House speaker who, in their careers, both in their personal lives, their professional lives, and also in their political lives, I think they've experienced this firsthand. And I think what they're pushing for is just, like you heard the speaker say today, we just want to go, if it were a golf analogy, we just want to go down the middle of the fairway to give everybody an equal chance. What we've had is literally 3 or 4 decades of the personal injury trial lawyers that you see on the billboards that advertise on TV. They've been very involved in the Florida bar, they've been very involved in elections, and they've been very involved in having a stranglehold on many in the Florida legislature. And I can't say it any better than the Speaker of the House said it today, is that we have a moment in time where the leadership in Florida, the governor, the Speaker, the president, they have the courage, they have the will, those were his words, not mine, to really try to bring some sanity and fairness back into this marketplace. And again, Dara, as president of the Florida Chamber, I would want to say, we're not asking to be the number 1 state in the country on this metric, but we have to be able to compete with Texas, North Carolina, Alabama, and other states for fairness on this. So there's probably 15 things that we would like to see done, but these 5 that leadership has said they're going to move forward, and hopefully we can get across the finish line. Remember, this is politics. Nothing is a foregone conclusion, and the game's not over till the game's over.
There's horse trading.
we have a long way to go
Right.
Until this actually gets to the governor's desk, and hopefully, if it does get signed. So we're optimistic. But if you think about the timing of this, Dara, Florida is growing 1,000 people a day. We think we're going to add another 250,000 jobs this year. So it's easy to think, oh, everything in Florida is going great. Why do we need to do this?
Right.
I'm a pilot, and one of the things that we always look at is there going to be a headwind or a tailwind when we fly somewhere? And, the lawsuit abuse crisis that we have in Florida, this $5,000 plus per family of 4 that we're all spending just to live here, this is a huge headwind. And, Florida's economy would be growing faster. We would be attracting advanced manufacturing. We would be attracting more IT if we had some sanity in the lawsuit abuse problem that we have.
Well, I just want to ask you one more question before. Thank you, Mark Wilson, President and CEO of the Florida Chamber. One of the speakers just stopped, and so it's getting a little bit rowdy out here. Do you think Ron DeSantis is going to run for president?
Yeah, I just don't know if he's going to or not. I will tell you, I just finished my 2-year term as chair of the National Association of State Chambers, and there are a lot of business leaders across the country hoping that he does decide to run for president. I think they're seeing what's happened. Our GDP is up something like 30% since he took office 4 years ago. Our population's growing. People are leaving New York, Illinois, New Jersey, California, coming to Florida in droves. And so the rest of the country is looking at this Florida model, the Florida recipe. And I'm getting calls from all over the country with that same question is, hey, when's he going to announce? Is he going to run? What can we do to support him? So I don't have any inside knowledge of if that's going to happen or when that's going to happen. But the country likes this idea of freedom and a free state. And I'm literally getting calls every couple days from my peers around the country, asking, hey, when and what can we do to help?
Will he win if he runs?
I think if Governor DeSantis decides to run for president, I think he's the front runner because he can actually show results on the board on everything from education to hopefully soon tort lawsuit abuse reform. Look at the infrastructure investments that we've made. Look also, remember the supply chain crisis that the world has?
Yeah, where's my pizza?
Who was the first governor to take a look at the union problems in California that were driving up their supply chain problems, and the first to say, look, we have 15 deepwater ports in Florida. Why don't we become the new entry point for a lot of global trade in Florida? Like that, those are the kinds of things people pay attention to. And so I would have to think he's absolutely the front runner. And if you just look at how Florida's economy is doing, how our outcomes are, and everything from infrastructure to education, I'm a little biased because I run the Florida Chamber of Commerce and I've got a front row seat in how Florida's doing versus other states. But the country's watching, and I think the country's hoping.
Well, there you have it, folks. From Mark Wilson, President and CEO of the Florida Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much for joining us today. And maybe we'll make this an annual thing where we join you for your annual legislative fly-in.
Yeah, Dara, thanks so much. Appreciate our friendship. And let's do this even more often. We don't have to wait a year.
Absolutely. I'm going to have you back on the podcast soon.
Let's do it. Thanks, Dara.
Buddy. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back to A Deeper Dive with Dara Cam. We are here right now with Kevin Carr of Florida Makes, and you are joining us. We're recording this today at the Turnbull Center for the 2023 Florida Chamber of Commerce Legislative Fly-In, one of the big pre-legislative session events of the year. So welcome, Kevin. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you for having me.
I'd like to ask you a little bit about Florida Makes.
Sure.
And what your legislative priorities will be.
So Florida Makes is an organization whose sole focus is strengthening and advancing the manufacturing sector and the manufacturing economy in the state of Florida. So that's our purpose. We're a 501c3. We get funded by U.S. Department of Commerce, National Institute of Standards and Technology to go out there and work with small, medium-sized manufacturers, but also the entire ecosystem, but primarily small, medium-sized manufacturers, trying to help them adopt new technology, trying to help them accelerate the development of their talent, and to grow their business. So Florida, as a state, is emerging. It's behind many other manufacturing states, but if you drew lines and you saw the growth patterns in productivity and employment, you'll see that Florida's on a growth path to hopefully surpass a lot of those traditional manufacturing states.
So I've been covering politics and state government for over 20 years. It's been a minute, and when you think of Florida, most people think of tourism
Yes.
and agriculture,
Yes.
right? I mean, and this is one area, I know this is a problem of being a reporter sometimes, is you know a little about a lot of things. And this is one area that I know hardly anything about. So I'm very interested in what you have to tell us about Florida manufacturers. First of all, how many of them are there, and what is the major, is there a major manufacturing?
I think at last count there's like 24,000, more
Wow.
than 24,000. The
Wow.
average size is about 17 employees, so a lot of the manufacturing companies in the state of Florida, 80% of them are under 20 employees.
Huh, so mom and pop shops.
They're mom and pop shops. They're kind of hidden in your backyard, in your neighborhood in some cases. And as you characterize it, not very many people, even in the legislature, are aware of the importance and the presence of manufacturing in the state. So one of the things that we have been trying to do, you talk about legislative priorities, a big one that we've been trying to push is, where does a manufacturer go? So you mentioned agriculture, I know where to go. Tourism, I know where to go. Transportation, I know where to go. Manufacturer, there isn't a door in any of the agencies, and there isn't a committee in any part or subcommittee in part of the legislature. So that's part of our big push. And if you're familiar, I'm sure they rolled out yesterday. I wasn't here yesterday, but probably rolled out the Trade and Logistics 2030, which has a heavy emphasis on manufacturing, the importance of manufacturing, and elevating that in the sort of policy and regulatory environment. Manufacturing is here, it's growing, we need to deal with it as an industry.
So do we need a new state agency?
I don't know that we need an agency. I think within, existing agencies, there's room for, a grown-up in charge. Now, perhaps in the governor's office or perhaps in a group like Department of Economic Opportunity.
Right.
They have doorways there for I'm saying doorways. I'm not asking for much. Someone there who's sort of
You know where to
mindful
go.
of the policy for defense or for film right here,
Right.
but not manufacturing. And as an industry, it's probably this year will come in at about $60+ billion industry,
Wow.
employing about 424,000, and that's growing. I think since last year, more than 25,000 year-over-year growth in manufacturing. So something's happening in Florida with manufacturing. It's time to deal with it from a policy perspective.
Under the radar
Right.
growth. Yeah, that's really fascinating. Do you have any legislative priorities this year?
Well, that doesn't fit in the form of a bill. It fits in the form of a conversation and advocacy. A lot of members that have talked about this too.
Education.
Yes. One of the things that we've managed to help inspire over the past couple of years is the creation of a manufacturing and supply chain caucus to begin that process in the legislature. Now, caucus isn't a committee, it's not
Right.
a subcommittee, but to begin that process of I would call that education.
Right.
I would call that advocacy.
Sure.
We have a couple of bills that would support activities like ours, and I can get you a legislative agenda. I can't rattle it off the top of my
I
head.
just was wondering,
But
while
just
we're chatting.
to see more funding and more, what I would say, attention to the business climate for manufacturers.
Right.
One of the big issues that they've been dealing with over the years is tax on commercial leases. They have to deal with that.
Oh, I know that has been
Tangible
something.
property tax is a big one that comes up and bites manufacturers. And then support for, organizations like ours that go out there and work with the small firms and to give them that bandwidth. Like I said, there's no agency per se.
Have you seen, we've seen a growth in Florida, post-COVID, kind of people wanting to come to, Governor DeSantis calls it the free state of Florida. And there's been this, where did all the workers go? For months I wanted to do a podcast on, where, you couldn't get a pizza.
Right.
Where did all the workers go? Are manufacturers having any kind of a crunch trying to hire workers?
They are. That's one of the biggest challenges. What I hear, it's sort of bittersweet, is we've never had as much business as we have right now, and we can't respond to all of it because we don't have the labor force that we need to respond to it. So that's a challenge that they have, but I don't think they're alone with that. As you pointed out, you can go into construction, you can go into the finance industry, and you say, what's your biggest problem? People. So it's people, bodies, warm bodies in manufacturing, but then also skills. People think of manufacturing as people, putting buttons in a box or something like
Right.
that. But it's become very high-tech, a very clean industry that requires some core digital skills. So you're looking at more mechatronics, you're looking at more robotics.
Right.
And so you have to have that
STEM
kind of
stuff.
skill. So there's a lot of work and a lot of emphasis from groups like CareerSource, from the two-year colleges across the state
Sure.
to upskill even the existing workforce. So not only can't find them, you got to upskill the workers that you do have, because
Right.
it may be, people for years. There was this fear of robotics is going to displace people. I think robotics is going to be the thing that fills the gap. And it's going to
Right.
offset that. And some of it's just sheer numbers. Baby boomers are retiring.
Right.
And, there's not that sort of generation behind them. There's not as many warm bodies that go in there and go into these jobs.
Right.
And the other challenge that they have too is perception issues. People still think of manufacturing as sort of this dirty, dingy industry, and you say, would you want to do that? And they go, no. Would you want to do robotics? Oh, yes. So it's a matter of repackaging what manufacturing is, what that future looks like.
Marketing.
And
yeah.
some of that starts, middle school. It starts with, young kids, getting them involved and in pursuing, STEM careers, science, technical, engineering, and math kind of careers. So, to solve that that pipeline problem, you might have to go way upstream and start working with very young people to sort of nurture them in the direction of these kind of careers.
Fascinating. Well, thank you so much,
Thank you.
Kevin Carr, the
CEO
CEO
of Florida
Makes. And we've got a booming manufacturing business in Florida that Dara Cam didn't know about. So,
All right, well,
thank you very much. It's been a pleasure having you.
Thank you for the time.
Welcome back to A Deeper Dive with me, Dara Cam. We are podcasting live from the Turnbull Center in Tallahassee at the 2023 Florida Chamber of Commerce Legislative Fly-In. So it is a bit noisy, kids, but that's because there's a lot to talk about and a lot going on. And I'm really happy to tell you that we have a special guest with us now, former Senator Kelli Stargel from Lakeland. Welcome. I always call it, once a senator, always a senator. I forget who said that, but Senator Stargel, how are you?
I am doing great, and I'm excited to be kind of back here in Tallahassee. But in this new role that I'm doing now, working for Polytechnic University and telling that story, it's been a great opportunity to get up here and get to the business leaders who have a passion for trying to make sure that government and education and business all work together well. It's been fun. It's really been fun to be up here in a whole different capacity.
I'm so long in the tooth that I remember when J.D. Alexander created Florida Polytech. So I don't remember how many years ago that was, but I'm not giving anything away. Yeah, everybody knows I've been around for a minute. So what are you doing? What is your role there?
Yeah, I'm working with strategic relations to tell the story. The state has invested a lot of money in our higher education system, and we have right here a totally dedicated STEM university, and we need to make sure people know that and take that show on the road and let the businesses know, let the students know that they have opportunities right here in the state of a totally dedicated STEM university. I know there's a lot of discussion on our universities and what the roles are and what they should be doing. That's the joy of Polytechnic University. It is focused on STEM and STEM alone, which is great.
I was just talking to the CEO of Florida Makes, and he was emphasizing how much the manufacturing industry needs more Floridians to be educated in STEM or re-educated in STEM. So what you're doing is really filling, a need for the 21st century. Kind of everybody talks about STEM, and Florida Polytech is, as you said, devoted to that. There's a lot of higher ed in Florida is undergoing a major upheaval now with Governor DeSantis and the legislature. And so what do you think, how do you think that's going to shake out, and how do you think that'll affect Florida Polytech?
I think what he's doing is trying to make the university figure out how they can zero focus on their mission. And one of the reasons that I love working with Florida Polytechnic is it has had that mission from the beginning of being just STEM and focusing on what that is. And like Florida Makes and the manufacturing, we're trying to get our colleges, state colleges, everybody to step up. But what the university system can offer is the ability to look and research and think outside of not just preparing people and students for the job of today, but preparing the ideas and the innovation that create the jobs of tomorrow that we don't even know what they are yet. And this whole new world that we've got going on with AI, what that's going to develop into, how can our businesses take that information and take it to market in a way that benefits the people, and the students and the universities prop that up with the technology. I mean, you hold an iPhone and there are literally thousands of components that went into that technology that came out of our universities. So the universities are important, but we need to make sure they're zeroed in on what they're supposed to be doing, which is educating our students on how they can create innovations and jobs and things for the future, not so much of what many of them have gone into the social side. That's really, to me, not a role of the university. That's why I love Polytech.
Well, as a psychology major, I might be a little bit wounded by that, but
Well, there's a discipline for that, and I'm not saying those disciplines
Right.
aren't important,
Right.
but it seemed to be pervasive across the whole system, and maybe that might not be accurate as far
well,
as what was there.
you're less a target for the ideological kind of warfare and the culture wars that are going on right now.
Yes.
So you're in a safe space. Thanks again, Senator, Florida Polytechnic University consultant,
Strategic relations.
strategic relations, Kelli Stargel. She was the Senate budget chief for a while, one of the most powerful people in Florida for several years. Thank you very much for joining me.
Hey, it's very good to see you again, John.
You hear it's very noisy here because we are live from the 2023 Florida Chamber of Commerce Legislative Fly-In, and people are flocking into one of the conference rooms for the next speaker. But we're really happy, and also, pardon the toilet flushing, but our mics are really super great, and they pick up all the nuances of what's happening here. Welcome to our special guest right now, Alix Miller, President and CEO of the Florida Trucking Association. I apologize for the noise, Alix. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, the energy is high around here, isn't it?
It really is. I wanted to ask you what your legislative priorities are going into the 2023 session.
Well, I don't think it's any surprise that priority number 1, number 2, and number 3 is comprehensive tort reform. Trucking has been bearing the brunt of lawsuit abuse for 10 years or so. For example, lawsuits have increased for trucking 335%
Wow.
for verdicts. So, for example, in 2010, the average verdict for a trucking company was $2.3 million, and in 2019 it was $22.3 million, and it keeps going up exponentially.
So there's a lot about trucking during COVID. There was a lot of push for, there weren't enough truck drivers. What's the status of that now?
There are still not enough truck drivers. Right now we need about 80,000. I'll tell you that in Florida there are 480,000 CDL or commercial driver's license holders. That is really about 20% nationally because we have a lot of needs when it comes to trucking. We're a consumer state. You know, of course, we've got...
We're a big state, too.
We're in an inefficient state when it comes to a truck. What goes down must come back up.
Right.
So if you're delivering down to Key West and you're going back to Georgia, that's going to take a lot of time and a lot of manpower. But with COVID and then, of course, with hurricanes, people really are more aware of how important trucking is and truck drivers are to our state, to our economy, and your daily life.
I think that the pandemic really did elevate that. As you know, I remember seeing the truckloads, the what do you call them, the convoys of truckers, and they're almost like first responders during the pandemic because we were so reliant on all of the toilet paper and things that we weren't getting, and I think that we became so as a society, as a culture, we just take things for granted. As somebody who's now unable to walk, I really have a new understanding of just how much we take for granted.
You're absolutely right. I always say, we're one of the most powerful invisible industries, or have been, because people do just take for granted. They don't think about the many, many steps that it takes for a good to end up in your store or a package to land on your front door. And the pandemic really shed light on that, particularly when we couldn't get get things as easily, or there were shortages of things temporarily because that good was somewhere else, and it took a little more time to make it to people's front doors.
Well, thank you very much, Alix Miller, President and CEO of the Florida Trucking Association, for joining us on a deeper dive here at the 2023 Florida Chamber of Commerce Legislative Fly-In.
Thank you so much.
A Deeper Dive with Dara is a podcast by City and State Florida, hosted by Dara Cam, produced by Ryan Daly, and music for the podcast was recorded by Periodic Labs LLC and performed by Ryan Daly and Danny Reyes.